Friday, January 2nd, 2026. AGNDD Until I Report topic. Cecilia Giménez, woman who ruined Jesus painting, dies at 94. Please pardon any visual and informational inaccuracies in this partially AI-generated article-based video. Spanish woman scorned, then loved for botched fresco restoration dies at 94. Cecilia Giménez's repainting of an image of Jesus in 2012 was widely mocked online. But tourists flocked to see her work, reviving her struggling hometown. The New York Times, by Amelia Nierenberg, reporting from London, published December 30th, 2025, updated December 31st, 2025. Cecilia Giménez, an amateur painter in Spain whose attempt to restore a church fresco of Jesus in 2012 ricocheted across social media, turning her town into a tourism hotspot, died on Monday. She was 94. The authorities in Borja, Mrs. Giménez's hometown in the Zaragoza region of northeastern Spain, confirmed her death. Eduardo Arilla, the mayor of Borja, told a local newspaper, Heraldo de Aragon, that she had died in a local nursing home. The world came to know her through this charming anecdote, the Borja City Council said in a statement on Tuesday, referring to her attempted restoration of the nearly century-old fresco of Jesus. But we all knew already what a great person she was. When Mrs. Giménez's handiwork came to light in August 2012, however, the authorities initially suspected that the church had suffered an act of vandalism. The delicate misery on the face of Christ en route to the crucifixion had been replaced by a misshapen head. Mrs. Giménez, then already in her 80s, told Spanish television at the time that she had tried to restore the fresco, which she called her favorite depiction of Jesus in her area. The painting, Ecce Homo, or Behold the Man, was created in the 1930s by Elias Garcia Martinez, an art professor. The fresco had started to flake, Mrs. Giménez said, most likely because of moisture in the 16th century church in Borja where it resided. The priest knew it, she added. I've never tried to do anything hidden. But images of the botched restoration spread quickly online, where many parodied her work. The local authorities considered legal action against Mrs. Giménez. Her relatives told the New York Times in 2014 that she had wept and refused to eat after her restoration attempt made global headlines. I felt devastated, Mrs. Giménez told the Times. They said it was a crazy old woman who destroyed a portrait that was worth a lot of money. But her artistic mishap created an economic boon for Borja, a town of 5,000 inhabitants. Tourists flocked to see her efforts. Less than 3 years later, more than 150,000 visitors from Japan, Brazil, the United States, and elsewhere had made a trip to Borja, paying €1, about $1.20, to view her work under a protective clear cover. Local officials told the Times in 2014 that the tourism spike had stabilized the town's restaurant industry and helped the area's institutions. The nearby Museo de la Collegiata, which houses religious medieval art, experienced a rise in annual visits to 70,000 from 7,000. Vineyards in the region squabbled over the rights to put Mrs. Giménez's Christ on their labels. In 2016, 2 Americans even staged an opera about the affair in the same church. Mrs. Giménez, once ridiculed, became a beloved figure, even handing out prizes for a competition of young artists who had painted their own Ecce Homo portraits. Amelia Nierenberg is a Times reporter covering international news from London. A version of this article appears in print on December 31st, 2025, Section A, page 12 of the New York edition with the headline, A Painter Whose Error Buoys a Town is Dead at 94. Comments. Amelia Nierenberg, Breaking News Reporter, December 30th, 2025. Hi everyone, I wrote this story. Thanks for reading it. I'll start with a confession, perhaps as is appropriate for this story. I thought this was hilarious in 2012. It was just so shocking and so different from the earlier fresco. I loved it, the absurdity and the near lawlessness of her restoration, but never really thought about the effect it had on the artist, the church, or the town. Today, I've been moved to see how much gratitude is still coursing through her town, where local officials once hated her attempt. Quite accidentally, she transformed the tourism economy and helped the town get through difficult economic years. She was a minor celebrity and a beloved member of the community. One appraisal of her life that I saw today called her the most famous Spanish painter of the 21st century. I loved that. Amateur art canonized by the collective shock delight of social media. I'm curious to know if any of you had the same reaction, and if any of you are feeling a little guilty about it today. I am. It seems like those first few weeks of mockery were really hard for her, and I'd love to know if that resonates. What do you make of this arc? What do you think of her project? Did she ruin the fresco, see it in another way, or something else entirely? Thanks for reading. Cannes, Philadelphia, December 30th, 2025. At Amelia Nierenberg, completely agree with you. I initially scoffed at her attempt to restore the piece, secure in the assumption that her act had devalued the art. What I didn't understand, but what Mrs. Giménez had, is that this particular work is a living testament to the community's devotion. The art is about more than the piece in isolation. It's about Borgia's spirit. With your reporting, I now see that Mrs. Giménez restored much more than a fading portrait on the wall. Bobby McFarlane, Tokyo, December 30th, 2025, at Amelia Nierenberg. I too have followed this story from the start. I truly cannot remember how I felt at the time, but I am drawn to stories that are quirky and have a surprise ending. I feel now only joy for what she accomplished, bringing a 100-year-old painting into the modern era with new life and still able to move people. Bravo. Fernando, SF Bay Area, December 30th, 2025, at Amelia Nierenberg. She is part of a generation of women whose initiative and hard work, Kujans I'd say, that took matters into their hands when everybody else complained. Thank God for having her in our journey of life. Macro, North Florida, December 30th, 2025. At Amelia Nierenberg. Precisely my reactions. Initially, I planned to gawk at my first opportunity. In recent years, I've traveled across northern Spain twice, but didn't stop. I felt that it would be rude to the woman, the church, and the town itself. Over time, I was more inclined to view the whole matter as a sincere, selfless exercise in folk art craft. Rakes, Seattle, December 30th, 2025, at Amelia Nierenberg. What I find amusing is that the media first freaked out and acted like she destroyed some priceless work of art from a master painter. It wasn't. The original painter wasn't well known at all. If you go to his Wikipedia page, the majority of it is about this incident. There's also a line about how he was an unremarkable painter, too. So, good for her. Good for her town, too. Louisa, CT, December 30th, 2025, at Amelia Nierenberg. The restoration still is pretty hilarious. She did destroy the original, and the tourism economy only picked up, as you said, accidentally. Glad this was a positive outcome in the end, though. Bucky, Mooningtonburg, December 30th, 2025, at Amelia Nierenberg. No real need to confess here. It was hilarious and still is, and the story is all the better from the excellent human irony of the fix having such a long and positive effect on the town. I like it because it's kind of a subtle send-up of the pompous nature of religion. Joe, Nevada, December 30th, 2025. This is like a story from a Gabriel Garcia Marquez or John Steinbeck novel. I'm glad there was a happy ending. KN, Philadelphia, December 30th, 2025, at Amelia Nierenberg. Completely agree with you. I initially scoffed at her attempt to restore the piece, secure in the assumption that her act had devalued the art. What I didn't understand, but what Mrs. Giménez had, is that this particular work is a living testament to the community's devotion. The art is about more than the piece in isolation. It's about Borgia's spirit. With your reporting, I now see that Mrs. Giménez restored much more than a fading portrait on the wall. Canute, Us, December 30th, 2025. Call me crazy, but I don't think it's funny, quirky, or heartwarming to promise you will skillfully restore skillful and historic art and negligently destroy it instead. This is the perspective of someone who thinks all art is expendable, and age or virtuosity add no value. Hey look, someone replaced the Mona Lisa smile with a yellow smiley face. I love it. And Austin, Texas, December 30th, 2025. I did not realize it has been that long. I remember reading it and thinking the restored image was hilarious. I'm glad the painter did not remain in misery and was celebrated afterwards. David Terry, Hillsborough, North Carolina, December 30th, 2025. Well, thank you, Miss Nierenberg. I, too, scoffed at Mrs. Giménez's inept attempt at restoration. I was, more importantly, angered more or less by the woman's presumptuousness. I've spent many years admiring anonymous works in small, remote Spanish and French villages and towns. It's appalling to consider that a single, ignorant, if devout old woman with no training could just decide to improve such work. This is the first time that I've learned that the original painting was, at most, only slightly older than Mrs. Giménez herself. With the information you just provided, I just, somewhat abashedly, did the math. The painting was made sometime in the 1930s. I'd never read that before. Mrs. Giménez herself was born in 1932. That is, she was probably older than the painting. The church itself is 16th century. I'd assumed that the painting was also this old. Everything I read at the time had led me to believe that some ignorant, giddily pious old woman had vandalized a precious Renaissance fresco. That did indeed make for a good snicker at pious old village lady's headline. No one wrote that it was a quite modern painting, done so ineptly that it was already flaking off the plaster. Suddenly, and thanks to your writing the plain, simple facts of the matter, yes, I do feel a bit ashamed to have so readily swallowed the bait back in 2012. Thank you for your good article, of course. Sincerely, David Terry. Jason, New England, USA, December 30th, 2025. We were not told the whole story back then, and it was presented as a desecration. Now it comes across as a clumsy act of devotion. On the other hand, quite incidentally, you've reminded us that the right kind of tourism in a neglected place can be a boon. Tourism is often now a plague, but not always and everywhere. We need more thoughtful travel. Sedan Chair, Tacoma, WA, December 30th, 2025. When her handiwork came to light in August 2012, the authorities initially suspected that the church had suffered an act of vandalism. They had. Graffiti artists think they're beautifying the world too. Travis, Arizona, December 30th, 2025. The fresco restoration was botched, as acknowledged in the article, but became a tourist attraction. Why? People were interested to see ruined art? On one hand, I'm glad the woman was not subject to mockery for her remaining life. Or was she? On the other, I can't imagine wanting to travel to a destination to see something that was ruined. New Yorker 88, Lhasa, December 31st, 2025. God has a sense of humor, and he works in mysterious ways. Todd Fox, Earth, December 30th, 2025. I just love the idea that she is the most famous Spanish painter of the 21st century. Thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this AGNDD and Telly report, dear viewers. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell button to get notified during new uploads. And make sure to tune in next time. Stay safe and healthy. Cheers.